The rain silk cut diagonally through the dua in the old town of Qingzhou City, soaking the wooden plaque of Shigushe shiny, and the carvings on the edge of the plaque were swollen by the rain, exuding a heavy wood smell. At 6:30 in the evening, the wind swept through the counter with the scent of damp pink. Lin Mo was lowering his head to sort out the wire-bound book he had just received, his fingertips stroking the yellowed pages, and the thin calluses on the pads of his fingers rubbed against the uneven and convex handwriting. This is the mark left by the appraisal of ancient books in the past 3 years. The ringtone of the mobile phone suddenly pierced the silence. The sharp melody was particularly abrupt in the space full of ink fragrance. The word Zhao Yi was beating on the screen, and he paused with his fingertips, instantly restraining the laziness in his eyes. Zhao Yi is the captain of the Municipal Criminal Investigation Detachment and the only person who has maintained close contact since he left the police force, and every time this name appears, it means that a difficult case has come to the door. The unjust case 3 years ago was like a thorn, piercing Lin Mo's heart and never subsiding. He was once the youngest backbone of the Criminal Investigation Detachment, and solved several strange cases with keen observation and meticulous logic. But he was planted for a well-designed serial murder case, and the evidence was conclusive and indefensible. Although he was not prosecuted due to the lack of key evidence, he was forced to take off his police uniform, and changed from a detective admired by everyone to a marginal person who made a living by appraising ancient books. Over the years, he has deliberately avoided everything related to the police force, but he can't stand Zhao Yi's repeated pleas. Zhao Yi knows too well that the detective genes in Lin Mo's bones have never disappeared, and those puzzles that others can't see through always have traces to follow in his eyes. He is familiar with the ancient study, and he is familiar enough to tell the approximate age of the ancient books on each row of bookshelves. Zhu Chongdi has been running this used bookstore for 30 years, and he is a well-known old stubborn in the Qingzhou ancient book circle, who is withdrawn to the point of almost paranoia, and usually has almost no contact with outsiders except for necessary transactions, but hides many rare ancient books that are extinct on the market. The backyard study building was his lifeblood, an old 3-story wooden building with locks all year round. Except for himself, even the clerks who got along day and night were never allowed to step half a step on the 3rd floor. The last time Lin Mo saw Zhu Chongdi was half a year ago to help him identify a rare book of the Analects, when the old man had hidden a guard in his eyes that could not be hidden. And his words were pitiful, and only when he talked about ancient books. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Lin Mo, come to the used book market in the south of the city, and there's a murder case in the book building in the backyard of the ancient house. Zhao Yi's voice was wrapped in the sound of rain with a bit of solemnity. The deceased is the boss of Shigushe Zhu Chongdi, who died in the secret room on the 3rd floor of the library. Lin Mo grabbed his coat and rushed out. He was once the backbone of the Municipal Criminal Investigation Detachment, and was forced to leave his job due to an unjust case 3 years ago, and now he makes a living by helping people identify ancient books. But he is always pulled by Zhao Yi to help solve all kinds of bizarre cases. Zhu Chongdi has been running this old bookstore for 30 years, and he's withdrawn, but he hides a lot of rare ancient books, and the library is his forbidden place, and no one can enter and exit casually except himself. The used book market has long been surrounded by a yellow cordon, which is crowded with onlookers, and the sound of discussion is crushed by the sound of rain and floats into the alley. Zhao Yi stood at the door of the library, holding a half-burned cigarette in his hand. The rain wet the shoulders of his police uniform. His hair was stuck to his forehead, and his face was even uglier than the gloomy sky. When he saw Lin Mo coming, he immediately extinguished the cigarette butt and greeted him. His fingertips still had the burning heat of nicotine, and his tone was full of suppressed anxiety. The deceased is Zhu Chongdi, who just explained to the clerk at 9 o'clock this morning that he was going to sort out ancient books on the 3rd floor, and deliberately emphasized that no one was allowed to disturb him. The clerk wanted to ask if he wanted to stay for dinner before getting off work at 5:30, but found that the door on the 3rd floor was locked, and no one answered for more than 10 minutes. Zhao Yi's eyes swept over the scene in the cordon, and his brows twisted into a pimple. He has been a police officer for 15 years, and he has cracked only a handful of secret room cases, and every time it is a headache. Zhu Chongdi is not an unknown person in the Qingzhou ancient book circle, and if this case is solved for a long time, it will not only cause panic in the circle, but also attract pressure from superiors. More importantly, he knew in his heart that the only person he could rely on was Lin Mo. The young police officers in the detachment lacked experience in handling bizarre cases, and the old police officers were bound by inherent thinking. He deliberately avoided the complexity in Lin Mo's eyes, did not mention the police force, and only focused on the case itself, which was the respect he could give Lin Mo. The library is a 3-story wooden building left over from the Republic of China, and the stair treads have been polished smooth and shiny by the years, and they make a squeak sound when stepped on, like an overwhelmed groan. The air was filled with the smell of old wood, the unique musty smell of ancient books, and a hint of blood, wrapped in humid air which was particularly pungent when it penetrated into the nasal cavity. The door on the 3rd floor is an old-fashioned copper latch lock. The brass lock body is oxidized to black. The deadbolt is intact. There are no scratches that have been pried. And behind the door is a half-man all-pear blossomwood desk. The tabletop is thick, and at least 2 adults need to be barely pushed. The typical, seemingly impeccable secret room scene. Lin Mo raised his hand and pushed the desk. The tabletop did not move at all, and the contact between the table legs and the floor left deep indentations, which were obviously not temporarily touched. He squatted down and stroked the deadbolt of the copper lock with his fingertips, which was cold to the touch, and there were no fresh fingerprint marks on it, as if it had been carefully wiped. The door is plugged in from the inside. He looked up and asked Xiao Yi, but his eyes did not leave the lock cylinder. When you hit the door, is the latch fully plugged in? Yes, both the clerk and the witnesses can attest that the latch was stuck very tightly when it was knocked open, and the desk was firmly behind the door. With no trace of movement, Xiao Yi squatted beside him and pointed to the gap between the door and the door frame. You see, the widest part of this gap is only 2 millimeters, and it is impossible to control the latch with any tool. The deceased Xu Chongdi fell on the floor in front of the desk, his body curled up slightly, and a sharp horn-handled paper cutter was inserted into his chest, and most of the handle was submerged, leaving only a small part exposed. He was wearing a washed white teal gown with patches on the neckline and cuffs, and blood gushed out of the wound, soaking the front of the caftan and accumulating a puddle of dark red water stains on the floor, and the edges of the water stains had begun to solidify, taking on a dark brown color. The surface of the desk is unusually neat, not messy at all. An open copy of the Young Latadian is laid flat on the left side of the table. The pen, ink, paper, and inkstone are neatly placed, and the ink in the inkstone has not dried up. Obviously, it has just been used. The deceased held a wolf brush in his right hand, and his fingertips and fingers were stained with thick black ink, and the ink stain on the tip of the pen blurred a small piece on the last page of the scroll, as if it was suddenly interrupted while writing, and it was too late to put away the pen. Lin Mo slowly squatted down, without touching the corpse, and his eyes slowly moved along the posture of the corpse. The eyes of the deceased were wide open. There was still astonishment and disbelief in the bottom of his eyes, and his lips were slightly open, as if he wanted to say something. But he was forever frozen at this moment. He noticed that the deceased's left hand was clenched into a fist, and his knuckles were white, not like a state of natural relaxation. Did the forensic doctor examine his left hand? Lin Mo's voice was very soft, with an almost paranoid focus. He should be holding something in his hand. Xiao Yi immediately motioned for the forensic doctor to step forward, and the forensic doctor carefully broke Xu Chongdi's left hand, holding half a piece of torn rice paper in his palm. The color of the rice paper was white, completely different from the yellowed paper of the broken roll. There was no writing on it, and most of it was obviously deliberately torn off. Lin Mo's eyes sank, and he had a hint of judgment in his heart. Xu Chongdi was not defenseless. He may have sensed the danger before he was attacked, but he didn't have time to leave a complete clue. So he could only hold on to this half piece of rice paper, trying to leave a trace. This also completely denies the possibility of suicide who wants to disguise himself, as a homicide will never deliberately leave such a hidden clue. Forensic preliminary identification showed that the time of death was between 11 noon and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the fatal injury was a paper cutter on the chest, and there were only fingerprints of the deceased on the knife. Xiao Yi squatted down and pointed to the water stains on the floor. Strangely, there is no trace of blood splattering. It is more like the deceased fell directly to the ground after being stabbed, and the murderer did not move the body. The doors and windows of this room are locked from the inside, except for the door. There is only a small window, and outside the window is a 2-meter-high wall, and there are no climbing marks on the wall. Lin Mo didn't speak. His eyes slowly swept across the room like a searchlight, refusing to let go of every corner. The ancient books on the shelves are classified and placed according to the subsets of classics and history. Neatly arranged, the spine is evenly worn, and there is no trace of being forcibly turned or extracted. The 3 drawers of the desk are tightly closed. The copper drawer locks are intact. There are no signs of being pried, and there are only Zhu Chongdi's fingerprints on the drawer handles. There is still a little incense ash left in the copper incense burner in the corner. The shape of the incense ash is intact. There is no trace of being blown away, and there is a small box of incense sticks next to it. The packaging is intact. It should be used by Zhu Chongdi to burning incense. He is used to burning incense when appraising ancient books, saying that it can calm the mind, which is something Lin Mo has known for a long time. He once again set his eyes on the fragment of the Yongle Dadian, and gently pinched the edge of the page with his fingertips, moving softly as if treating a fragile treasure. The handwriting on the fragment scroll is neat and powerful with Zhu Chongdi's unique pen edge, and every word is written meticulously, which shows that he was extremely focused at that time. The last few lines of words came to an abrupt end, and there were slight scratches on the edges of the blurred ink stains, as if they had been left by a brush when it was touched by an external force. Lin Mo looked in the direction of the scratch, just in the direction of the door, which means that the murderer entered through the door and suddenly attacked Zhu Chongdi when he was writing with his back to the door, catching him off guard. Strange, Lin Mo murmured in a low voice, frowning slightly. Zhu Chongdi has a paranoid and vigilant personality. The 3rd floor of the study building is his forbidden place. Even if he is an acquaintance, he will never let the other party stand behind him, unless this person is someone he trusts completely, or rather, someone he has to let his guard down. Possible candidates quickly flashed in his mind. Zhu Chongdi was lonely all his life. No one he trusted, and his only relative was his nephew Zhu Mingyu. And the relationship between the two was bad, obviously impossible. The ancient book collector named Chen Jingfeng had a dispute with him, and it was impossible for Zhu Chongdi to let his guard down. Is there a 3rd hidden relationship? Is this paper cutter Zhu Chongdi's own? Lin Mo pointed to the handle of the knife and asked. Yes, the clerk confirmed that this is what Boss Zhu usually uses to cut the pages of the book, and it has been placed on the desk. Xiao Yi nodded. Now there are 2 possibilities. Either Zhu Chongdi committed suicide and arranged a secret room to disguise himself as a homicide. Either it was a homicide. And the murderer designed the perfect secret room and erased his fingerprints. But suicide doesn't make sense. Zhu Chongdi has no motive for suicide. He has just negotiated an ancient book deal recently, and he is in a good mood. Timalorston and for 3 years olive mood. Lin Mo stood up and walked to the window. The small window was smaller than expected, less than half a meter long and wide, and could only accommodate a child barely passing through, and the window frame was an old-fashioned wooden frame, swollen by rain, and the glass was covered with tiny cracks. Outside the window is a narrow alley, paved with blue stone slabs, washed clean by rain without any footprints or traces, and the end of the alley is connected to a main road. People come and go, but there are no surveillance cameras. This is a common problem in the old city, and the surveillance coverage rate is extremely low. He stretched out his finger and gently stroked the slight scratch on the edge of the windowsill. The length of the scratch was less than 2 centimeters, the depth was very shallow, and the edges were neat, as if it had been scratched by a sharp metal object. And the wood around the scratch was white, obviously new. No more than 24 hours at most. This scratch was not accidental. Lin Mo's fingertips gently rubbed the scratches, quickly recreating possible scenes in his mind. The murderer deliberately left scratches here, with the aim of diverting our attention and making us think that he was entering and exiting through the window, thus ignoring the real entrance and exit of the door. He turned to look at the door, his doubts getting deeper and deeper. If the murderer entered and exited through the door, how to put the latch in after leaving and put the desk behind the door? This seemingly impossible secret room mechanism must have flaws. Have you checked Zhu Chongdi's recent social relationships? Lin Mo retracted his gaze and looked at Xiao Yi, with unquestionable firmness in his tone. Focus on those who have dealings with him in ancient books, or who have personal grudges, especially those who can freely enter and exit the library. I am investigating, and someone has been asked to transfer Zhu Chongdi's bank statements and communication records. Zhao Yi took out his notebook, flipped through the page quickly with his fingertips, and said in a sullen tone, Zhu Chongdi is to withdraw. His social circle is pitifully narrow, and there are only a dozen contacts in his mobile phone, except for the clerk Li Wan, who are a few fixed buyers of ancient books, and there are almost no private phones. The only relative is his nephew Xu Mingyu. The relationship between the two is extremely bad. Xu Mingyu is an unemployed vagrant, idle all day long. Since 3 years ago, he has frequently come to the store to ask for money. Every time he is scolded away by Zhu Chongdi. Sometimes he will make a big fuss in front of the store, and everyone in the surrounding shop knows about it. Xiao Yi paused, pointed to the name on the notebook and continued. In addition, it is Chen Jingfeng, a famous collector of ancient books in Qingzhou, with a rich family background and obsessed with ancient books of the Song dynasty. 2 months ago, Chen Jingfeng bought a copy of the Xuanhe painting score from Zhu Chongdi, and after returning, he found someone to identify, saying that it was a fake, so he came to Zhu Chongdi to refund the money. Zhu Chongdi resolutely refused, saying that Chen Jingfeng looked away by himself and scolded him for not understanding ancient books, and the two had a very unpleasant quarrel, which spread all over the ancient book circle. Chen Jingfeng said harsh words in front of everyone at that time, saying that he would make Zhu Chongdi pay the price, which many people heard. There's one more person. Xiao Yi seemed to suddenly remember something undoubted. An ancient book restorer named Shen Mo Qian helped Zhu Chongdi restore a solitary book of the Song dynasty half a year ago, and the two have come and gone several times, but the specific relationship is unclear. We have contacted him and have not received a reply. When Lin Mo heard the name Shen Mo Qian, his fingertips paused slightly. He had heard this name. He was a master in the ancient book restoration circle, and his personality was also withdrawn, and he rarely interacted with people, but he did not expect to intersect with Zhu Chongdi. Lin Mo rubbed his chin. His eyes fell back on the fragment of the Young Latadian again, and the doubts in his heart gradually took shape. He carefully picked up the fragment, stroked the cracks of the pages with his fingertips, and sure enough, he touched a thin strip of paper, which was folded into tiny squares and hidden in the thickest cracks of the pages. He unfolded the note, on which several lines of code were written in very small handwriting, scribbled with a hint of haste, obviously written by Zhu Chongdi in an emergency. This is the ancient book code he and Zhu Chongdi studied together when they were young, originating from the ciphered documents of the Song dynasty, and it is a secret between the two, and no third person can understand it except for them. At that time, both of them were obsessed with ancient book codes and often studied together. But later, because of Zhu Chongdi's isolation, they gradually broke off contact, but they did not expect Zhu Chongdi to leave clues in this way at such a time. The content of the note was, Jingfeng, if it's the UG map, he knows where to hide, be careful. Lin Mo's heart sank suddenly, and his fingertips trembled slightly. The U-Trace map is a rare map of the Song dynasty, known as China's earliest national map, which is rumored to have been lost as early as the Ming and Qing dynasties, but it was not expected to be in the hands of Zhu Chongdi. He knew too well the value of this map, not only the value of cultural relics, but more importantly, the map may contain the secrets left by the ancients, which is enough to make countless people crazy. Chen Jingfeng is obsessed with the ancient books of the Song dynasty, and must know the value of the U-Trace map. And his dispute with Zhu Chongdi may not be because of the Xuanhe painting score at all, but for the U-Trace map. U-Trace map? Lin Mo frowned. Zhu Chongdi has the U-Trace map in his hand. UG2? Isn't that a rare map of the Song dynasty? The rumors have long been lost. Xiao Yi looked surprised. Zhu Chongdi never said to the outside world that he had this. Lin Mo put down the fragments, and the thoughts in his heart gradually became clear. Zhu Chongdi's death is likely to be related to the U-Trace map, and Chen Jingfeng has major suspicions, but how the secret room is formed is still a difficult problem in front of him. He walked to the door again, took out a magnifying glass from his pocket, and carefully observed the lock cylinder of the copper lock. Under the magnifying glass, there was a little fine wood chips inside the lock cylinder, and a few imperceptible white marks, Not like violent prying leftovers, but more like something lubricated or filled with residue. It's not sawdust. Lin Mo dipped his fingertips in a little white trace, put it on the tip of his nose and sniffed it, and a faint smell of beeswax came to his face. It's beeswax. Someone lubricated the lock cylinder with beeswax. His eyes became sharp. The murderer should have prepared beeswax in advance and applied it to the inside of the lock cylinder, in order to reduce friction and facilitate the use of some tool to control the deadbolt. Remove the lock cylinder and send it to the technical department for testing, not only to check fingerprints and foreign objects, but also to analyze the composition of beeswax. In addition, carefully inspect the inside of the lock cylinder to see if there are any traces left by tools. Xiao Yi immediately arranged for the police to disassemble the lock cylinder, and Lin Mo walked to the bookshelf and began to check the ancient books on the bookshelf one by one. He remembered that Zhu Chongdi had a habit of putting important ancient books within reach, and the Yuji map was so precious that it must be hidden on the 3rd floor, and it was a place where he could see it at any time, although the ancient books on the bookshelf were neat. He could feel that the placement of several books was slightly deliberate, which was not in harmony with the surrounding ancient books, but he couldn't see any clues for the time being. Subsequently, Lin Mo and Zhao Yi found Li Wan, the clerk of Shigushe. Li Wan is 20 years old this year, a native of Qingzhou. Her parents died early. She was taken in by Zhu Chongdi 2 years ago and helped take care of chores in the store, which is one of the few people Zhu Chongdi can trust. At this moment, she was sitting on a chair in the front hall of the store, her hands clasped tightly on the corners of her clothes. Her face was as pale as paper. Her lips were bloodless. Her eyes were full of fear and dazedness, and her body was still trembling slightly, obviously frightened by the sudden murder. Xiao Yi handed over a glass of warm water, and his tone was as gentle as possible. "Don't be afraid, we just ask you a few questions. You can think slowly and answer truthfully." Li Wan took the water glass. Her fingertips trembled violently. A lot of water spilled out. She took a sip of warm water. Her mood stabilized a little, raised her head with tears in her eyes, choked up and said, "Boss, he usually treats me very well. Although he talks little, he has never treated me badly. And he also taught me to recognize ancient books. I didn't expect." Lin Mo sat opposite her, his eyes gentle. He didn't ask, just quietly waiting for her to calm down. He could see that Li Wan was sincerely grateful to Zhu Chongdi, not pretending. After Li Wan wiped away her ears and stabilized her emotions, Lin Mo slowly spoke in a soft tone. "How is Boss Yu feeling this morning? Are there any unusual actions? For example, explain the funeral, or mention something special. How is Boss Yu feeling this morning? Have you ever met anyone?" Lin Mo asked. Li Wan sniffed, trying to recall the scene in the morning, her eyes full of seriousness. "The boss is in a good mood this morning, a little more than usual, and said that when he finishes sorting out the ancient books on the 3rd floor, he will invite me to eat at the time-honored Lu restaurant at the entrance of the alley in the evening. At about 10 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Chen Jingfang came. He was an old customer in the store, and I knew him. When he entered the door, he asked the boss if he was there, saying that he had something important to talk to the boss, and the boss was going downstairs at the time, and when he heard Mr. Chen's name, his face sank a little, but he still asked me to lead him to the door of the 3rd floor. I lead Mr. Chen to the door of the 3rd floor, and the boss asked me to go down and specially instructed me not to come up and disturb any sound, nor to let others approach the 3rd floor." Frowning slightly as if remembering something, "When I was sorting out the books downstairs, I vaguely heard a quarrel from the 3rd floor. The sound was not loud, but I could hear that the two were arguing very fiercely. I didn't hear what the specific quarrel was. I only heard the boss scolding you, Dream, and then there was no sound." About half an hour later, Mr. Chen came down. His face was ugly, his forehead was blue veins, and his eyes were also very scary, as if he was going to eat people. Lin Mo captured the key information. After the quarrel stopped, when Shen Jingfeng came down, were there any other voices in the mill? For example, footsteps, door opening? Li Wan thought carefully and shook her head. No. After the quarrel stopped, the 3rd floor was quiet. There was no sound. I thought they had negotiated, but I didn't expect. Halfway through the words, her eyes turned red again. When Shen Jingfeng left, was there anything unusual? For example, holding something in your hand or looking flustered? No, he didn't take anything in his hand. But his face was ugly, and he kicked the threshold when he went out. Li Wan recalled, with a hint of disgust in her tone. In addition, around 12 o'clock at noon, Zhu Mingyu came again. He asked for money every time he came, and he never helped the store with a little bit. He called the boss when he entered the door. I said that the boss was busy on the 3rd floor, and if he didn't let him go up. He was not happy, and he scolded in the store, saying that the boss was stingy, had money to hide and didn't spend it for his nephew, and dropped an old book in the store. I stepped forward to stop him. He pushed me, and then sat in the store for more than 10 minutes. And when I saw that the boss didn't come down, I scolded and left. And when I left, I said that I would make the boss regret it. Lin Mo's eyes sank. Although Zhu Mingyu's behavior was bad, it sounded more like incompetent rage. However, he still did not take it lightly. Money disputes are the fuse of many murders, and Zhu Mingyu has been rejected by Zhu Chongdi all year round, and it is difficult to guarantee that he will not commit murder impulsively. Zhu Mingyu usually comes to the store. Will he secretly go up to the 3rd floor? Lin Mo asked. Li Wan immediately shook her head. No. The boss is very close to the 3rd floor. Usually the door is locked, and only the boss has the key. Even if Zhu Mingyu wants to go up, he can't get in. And every time he came, he went straight to the counter to ask for money, and when he got the money, he left, and he didn't care about the 3rd floor at all. Lin Mo and Xiao Yi looked at each other. Chen Jingfeng and Zhu Mingyu were both suspected, and they both had time to commit crimes. Chen Jingfeng was motivated by the dispute over ancient books, and Zhu Mingyu was motivated by the dispute over money, and both of them appeared in the ancient house during the time of the crime. They first found Zhu Mingyu. Zhu Mingyu was 25 years old this year, unemployed vagrant. His hair is dyed exaggerated yellow, wearing a shabby sportswear with a faint smell of smoke and alcohol on his body. At this moment he is squatting on the steps at the gate of the community, holding a cheap cigarette in his hand. Seeing Xiao Yi and Lin Mo in police uniforms, his eyes instantly flashed with a hint of panic, and he subconsciously wanted to stand up and run away, but was stopped by the police brought by Xiao Yi. After being taken to the police station, Zhu Mingyu sat on a chair in the interrogation room, leaning back slightly, pretending to be calm and crossing Erlang's legs. But his eyes were erratic, not daring to look at Xiao Yi and Lin Mo. He knew in his heart that the police came to him. It must be related to Zhu Chongdi's death. Although he did not kill anyone, but he did hate Zhu Chongdi, hated him for being stingy, hated him for not caring about his life and death. This hatred made him inevitably a little guilty. I went to my uncle today to ask for money, but he wasn't downstairs. The little girl didn't let me go up. I sat for a while and left. I didn't see him at all. Zhu Mingyu curled his lips, his tone full of disdain. But he couldn't hide the panic in his eyes. I didn't kill him. He's my only relative. Who will ask for money after killing him? Besides, I can't beat him. Although he is old, his body is very strong. He deliberately emphasized his innocence, but forgot that the more he defended, the easier it was to reveal flaws. I went to my uncle to ask for money today, but he wasn't downstairs. The clerk wouldn't let me go up. I sat for a while and left, and I didn't see him at all. Zhu Mingyu curled his lips and said, I didn't kill him. He is my only relative. Who will ask for money if I kill him? Where did you go after you left? Can anyone prove it? Xiao Yi asked. I went to a nearby internet CIF to surf the internet, and the internet CIF owner can prove that I stayed from 12:30 noon to 5 in the afternoon. Zhu Mingyu said, hurriedly took out his mobile phone, unlocked it and showed his internet records and payment vouchers. You see, this is the internet fee I paid at 12:30. The extra meal money I paid at 5 o'clock. There is surveillance in the internet CIF. You can check it. I didn't leave it all in the middle. There was a hint of eagerness in his tone, and he wanted to prove his innocence immediately. Xiao Yi immediately asked someone to go to the internet CIF to verify, and the police officer rushed to the internet CIF with Zhu Mingyu's photos and internet records. The owner of the internet CIF confirmed that Zhu Mingyu did surf the internet in the store today, from 12:30 noon to 5 p.m., sitting by the window, during which he only went to the toilet twice, each time for no more than 5 minutes. and never left the internet. CIF. This was also confirmed by surveillance footage, and Zhu Mingyu's alibi was established. Lin Mo set aside, looking at Zhu Mingyu, who was relieved in the interrogation room, and did not relax at all. Excluding Zhu Mingyu, only Chen Jingfeng is left with suspicion. But Chen Jingfeng has connections and status in the ancient book circle, and he must act cautiously, and it may not be so easy to find conclusive evidence. He got up and walked out of the interrogation room, leaned against the wall of the corridor, lit a cigarette, and in the smoke, the scratches on the windowsill and the beeswax in the lock cylinder flashed again in his mind. What method did Chen Jingfeng use to create this perfect secret room? Excluding Zhu Mingyu, the suspicion completely fell on Chen Jingfeng. Chen Jingfeng, 54 years old, is a well-known collector of ancient books in Qingzhou with a rich family background, and has a private house in the old city that hides thousands of ancient books. He wore a custom-made tunic. His hair was meticulously combed, and he wore a pair of gold glasses, looking gentle and bookish, not at all like a person who could kill. Seeing Lin Mo and Xiao Yi, Chen Jingfeng looked unusually calm, as if he had expected them to come, and deliberately asked someone to make tea, and his tone was calm. Lin Mo noticed that Chen Jingfeng's fingers were slender, and his fingertips had thick calluses. This was a trace left by reading ancient books all year round, and he wore an antique watch on his left wrist, and there were slight scratches on the dial, similar in shape to the scratches on the windowsill of the library. But the color was different, and it should not be caused by the same utensil. Chen Jingfeng's eyes were calm and calm, even with a hint of scrutiny, as if he was observing them, not the suspects being interrogated. And behind this calmness there was either a clear conscience or a long preparation. Lin Mo knew in his heart that to deal with a scheming person like Chen Jingfeng, he could not rely on tough interrogation, but must find conclusive evidence and expose his disguise. He didn't ask questions immediately, but picked up his teacup, took a sip, and scanned the living room. Were full of ancient books and calligraphy and paintings, and the bookshelves were full of all kinds of ancient books. Obviously a person who was extremely obsessed with ancient books, and this obsession was enough to make him take risks for the sake of the U-Trace map. I did go to Zhuchangdi today to talk about the Shuwanhe painting score, and we had a quarrel, but I didn't kill him. Chen Jingfeng sat on the sofa, holding a teacup. His tone was flat, as if he was saying something that had nothing to do with him. I arrived at Shigushe at about 10:30. Talked with him for more than 20 minutes, and left without talking. The Shuwanhe painting score was obviously a fake, but he insisted that it was genuine, and scolded me for not knowing how to appreciate it. He put down his teacup and tapped the table with his fingertips lightly, with an even rhythm, with a hint of imperceptible arrogance in his eyes. I then went to the Municipal Museum and read a batch of ancient books of the Song Dynasty that had just been transferred from other places with the curator, and stayed until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which can be attested by the museum's monitoring on curator. And I can ruin my reputation in future for the sake of a fake. Chen Jingfeng's words were flawless, not only explaining his whereabouts, but also clearing up suspicions, and deliberately emphasizing his identity and reputation, trying to make them believe that he would not kill. Lin Mo captured the flaw in his tone. He didn't mention the U-Trace map at all. Even when talking about the dispute with Zhuchangdi, he deliberately avoided this map. If he really just wanted Zhuwanhe painting score, why didn't he mention UG2? Lin Mo didn't break it, but spoke slowly. You and Zhuchangdi have known each other for so many years. Have you heard of UG2? Hearing this name, Chen Jingfeng's fingertips paused for a moment, and a hint of panic flashed in his eyes, so fast that people could hardly notice it, and then he regained his composure. UG2, the rumors have long been lost. I have only heard of them, I have never seen them. And Zhuchangdi has never mentioned them to me. His answer was flawless, but the panic at that moment had already exposed that he was lying. Xiao Yi immediately sent someone to the museum to verify, and after the police arrived at the museum, they found the curator in the surveillance video at the time. The curator confirmed that Chen Jingfeng did arrive at the museum at about 11:15, and the two looked at the ancient books in the ancient book restoration room together, during which Chen Jingfeng only went to the toilet once, for about 5 minutes, and did not leave the museum, and the surveillance video also completely recorded his whereabouts. This is strange. Chen Jingfeng's alibi is also established, and the two suspects have no time to commit the crime. Is there really a third person? Xiao Yi scratched his hair a little irritably, and the case reached an impasse. Lin Mo was unusually calm. He knew that the more seemingly perfect the alibi, the more likely it was to hide flaws. Is Chen Jing 5 minutes to go to the toilet enough for him to do a lot? Obviously not enough, but what if his alibi was designed in advance? For example, he deliberately arrived at the museum at 11:15 and asked the curator and surveillance to testify for him. But the real time of the crime was actually before or after that. Let's go back to the library and take a look. Lin Mo stood up and said in a firm tone, there must be clues we missed at the scene. He didn't believe that Chen Jingfeng could do it seamlessly, and any criminal act would leave traces. But they hadn't found it yet. Back in Shigushe, the rain had dropped a lot, and the smell of blood in the study was still pervasive. Lin Mo took a deep breath and walked into the room on the 3rd floor again. This time, he had to resolve every corner from the inside out. Lin Mo did not give up. He returned to the study building of Shigushe again and resurveyed the scene. This time he focused entirely on the bookshelf, no longer limited to the neatness of the surface, but checked the placement and wear of each book one by one. Although the ancient books on the bookshelves are neat, the ancient books on one floor of the bookshelf are placed more closely than the other layers, and there are almost no gaps between the spines, which is inconsistent with Zhu Chongdi's usual placement habits. When Zhu Chongdi sorts out ancient books, he will deliberately leave a little gap to facilitate extraction. Lin Mo stretched out his hand and gently pushed away the closely arranged ancient books, and when his fingertips touched the board on the back of the bookshelf, he found that the board was a little loose. He pushed hard, and the board opened in response, revealing a palm-sized hidden grid. The inside of the dark grid was covered with red flannel. There were obvious traces of turning on the flannel, and there were still little paper fibers left on the edges. Obviously it had just been turned over, and it was empty and empty. This should be the place where the U-trace map is hidden. Lin Mo said to Xiao Yi. His fingertips stroked the velvet on the inner wall of the hidden grid. The hidden grid has just been turned over, and the fibers on the velvet are still very fresh, and the UG map must have been taken away by the murderer. Zhu Chongdi hid the U-trace map here, which is both hidden and easy to access, which is in line with his character. The murderer must have known the location of the hidden compartment for a long time, or, after killing Zhu Chongdi, he carefully searched the room, found the hidden compartment, and took away the map. Xiao Yi leaned over and carefully observed the hidden grid. Such a hidden place, who would know except Zhu Chongdi? How could Chen Jingfeng know the location of the hidden grid? Lin Mo shook his head. Either Zhu Chongdi inadvertently leaked it, or Chen Jingfeng has already sent someone to monitor Zhu Chongdi and find out his habits and the location of his secret grid. No matter which possibility it is, it can show that Chen Jingfeng is bound to win the U-trace map, and his suspicion is getting bigger and bigger. This should be the place where the U-trace map is hidden. Lin Mo said to Xiao Yi. The hidden grid has just been turned over, and the UG map should have been taken away by the murderer. At this time, the call from the technical section came, and the policeman's voice was full of excitement. Team Xiao, Mr. Lin, we found a little beeswax residue in the lock cylinder, and the composition analysis showed that it was pure natural beeswax. In addition, a blurred fingerprint was extracted, and after comparison, it was confirmed that it was Chen Jingfeng's. We also found subtle fiber traces inside the lock cylinder, which should have been left by the rope when the murderer controlled the deadbolt. After hanging up the phone, Xiao Yi's eyes lit up instantly. Fingerprints. With this fingerprint, you can be sure that Chen Jingfeng has been to the scene. Lin Mo was not so optimistic. He frowned, and his tone was solemn. Chen Jingfeng can defend himself by saying that when he went to the study building before, he accidentally touched the lock cylinder and left fingerprints. This fingerprint can only prove that he touched the lock, but it cannot prove that he killed someone. We also need more conclusive evidence that he appeared in the library at the time of the crime and created the secret room. He quickly restored the process of the crime in his mind after Chen Jingfeng quarreled with Zhu Chongdi. He did not leave Shigushe, but took advantage of Li Wen's gap to go to the warehouse to sort out the books, and secretly hid back in the stairwell on the 2nd floor of the library. After killing Zhu Chongdi, he found the secret cell, took away the UG map, then made a secret room, and then left calmly to make an alibi in the museum. But how did he leave and put the desk behind the door? There is still no answer to this question. Qian Jingfeng has an alibi. How could he leave fingerprints in the lock cylinder? Xiao Yi wondered. Lin Mo pondered for a moment, suddenly thought of something, and his eyes instantly became sharp. His alibi may be fake. Or rather, he took advantage of the time difference. It only takes 20 minutes to drive between the museum and Shigushe, and after a quarrel with Zhu Chongdi, he can secretly stay in the library while the clerk is not paying attention, kill Zhu Chongdi, take away the U-trace map, and then set up the secret room, and then drive to the museum to make an alibi. He talked with Zhu Chongdi for more than 20 minutes, and after the quarrel, Li Wan went to the warehouse, and the gap of more than 10 minutes was enough for him to complete the hiding place. But how is a secret room formed? Xiao Yu wondered. The desk is so heavy. It is impossible for him to put the desk behind the door outside the door, and it is impossible for the latch to be inserted from the outside. Lin Mo didn't answer, walked to the door again, carefully observed the copper lock in the desk behind the door. His fingertips stroked the four legs of the desk, and suddenly, his fingertips stopped on the right leg of the desk. There was a faint circular trace, less than a centimeter wide, as if it had been strangled by a thin rope. The trace was very new, and it matched the fiber traces in the lock cylinder. I know. Lin Mo's tone had a hint of certainty. The murderer should have used a rope mechanism. After killing Zhu Chongdi, he first pushed the desk to about a meter away from the door, then used a thin nylon rope to tie one end to the right leg of the desk, the other end passed through the latch hole of the copper lock, and then pulled it out through the gap between the door and the door frame. Then he walked out of the room, closed the door gently, pulled the rope outside the door, and the rope drove the latch to plug the door in. After the latch was inserted, he continued to pull the rope hard, and the rope rotated around the desk leg, driving the desk to slowly move towards the door until the desk was firmly behind the door. Finally, he used scissors to cut the rope from outside the door, and then pulled it hard to pull the rope out of the lock cylinder and desk leg, and took it away and destroyed it. The beeswax in the lock cylinder is to reduce the friction between the rope and the lock cylinder, making it easier for the rope to pull the latch and desk. He walked to the door again and carefully examined the copper lock in the desk behind the door. Suddenly, he noticed a faint trace of a rope on the leg of the desk, as if it had been strangled by some thin rope. The murderer should have used a rope mechanism. Lin Mo said. After he killed Zhu Chongbi, he pushed the desk to the door, passed the thin rope through the leg of the desk, then passed through the keyhole of the copper lock, pulled the rope outside from the crack of the door, closed the door, pulled the deadbolt through the rope, locked the door, and then pulled the rope hard, pulled the rope out of the keyhole, and finally took the rope away. The wax shavings in the lock cylinder should be used by him to lubricate the lock cylinder and make it easier to pull the rope. Xiao Yi suddenly realized, what about the scratches on the edge of the windowsill? It should have been used by the murderer to divert attention, making us think that he escaped through the window, thus ignoring the real entrance and exit of the door. Lin Mo said that scratch was most likely drawn by him with the keychain he carried with him, in order to mislead us in the direction of our investigation. When Qian Jingfeng and Zhu Chongdi were talking, they must have known the hiding place of the Yuji map through questioning or observation, and he deliberately quarreled with Zhu Chongdi, on the one hand to hide his true purpose, and on the other hand to create the illusion that he was leaving angrily, so that Li Wan thought that he was really gone. He pretended to leave Shigushe, but in fact went around to the backyard, taking advantage of Li Wan's time to sort out the books in the warehouse, and secretly returned to the stairwell on the second floor from the side door of the library. The side door of the library is usually only available to Zhu Chongdi, but Qian Jingfeng often comes to the store, and there is a high probability that he knows the location of the side door, and may even secretly get the key. When Zhu Chongdi returned to the third floor and concentrated on sorting out ancient books, when he was unprepared, he rushed up from the stairwell and stabbed him in the chest with a paper-cutting knife, while Zhu Chongdi was writing with his back to the door. Lin Mo paused and continued to restore the process of the crime. After Zhu Chongdi was attacked, he subconsciously grabbed the corner of Qian Jingfeng's clothes, tore off half a piece of rice paper. Qian Jingfeng panicked, broke free hard, and then went to the hidden compartment behind the bookshelf to take away the U-trace map, and then according to the method I just said, arranged the secret room mechanism with a rope, and then left through the side door, took a taxi to the museum, and arrived at 11:15, making a perfect alibi. Xiao Yi nodded repeatedly when he heard this. Lin Mo's reasoning logic was rigorous, which was completely in line with the clues on the scene. But there is another question. When Shen Jingfeng left, why didn't anyone see it? Is there any surveillance at the side door? Lin Mo shook his head. The side door of the library leads to a remote alley. There is no surveillance, and at that time period, people in the used book market are eating or resting. Few people pass by. He can leave calmly. Now, we are only one last piece of evidence away, the nylon rope used to arrange the mechanism, and the half piece of rice paper that he destroyed. But there is another question. When Shen Jingfeng left the library, the clerk Li Wan was downstairs. How could he avoid Li Wan? Lin Mo immediately went to Li Wan to verify. When Shen Jingfeng left, did you keep staring at the staircase? Is it possible that he pretended to leave and secretly return to the library? Li Wan thought for a while, trying to recall the scene at that time. Her eyes were full of seriousness. After Mr. Chen left, it was about 11 o'clock. And I saw that the ancient books in the warehouse had not been sorted out, so I went to the warehouse to sort out the books. The warehouse is in the backyard of the store, some distance from the library. And the door of the warehouse is closed. I was very focused when sorting out the books. I didn't pay attention to the movement outside. It took about 10 minutes. And I didn't return to the front hall until about 11:15. During that time, no one was really staring at the staircase and side door. And if he wanted to come back secretly, it was entirely possible. This timeline is completely consistent with Lin Mo's reasoning. Shen Jingfeng pretended to leave at about 11 o'clock. Li Wan went to the warehouse at 11 o'clock to sort out the books. Shen Jingfeng took the opportunity to return to the library from the side door, killed Zhu Changdi at about 11 and 10 o'clock, and then spent 10 minutes to arrange the secret room. Left through the side door at about 11 and 20 o'clock, took a taxi to the museum, and arrived at the museum at 11:15 o'clock. The time difference here was because Shen Jingfeng asked the driver to wait at the side door in advance, and after getting in the car, he ran a red light all the way, and the drive was shortened by 5 minutes. He created the illusion that he was in the museum at 11:15. Have you ever seen Shen Jingfeng carry a thin rope or scissors or something? Lin Mo asked. Li Wan thought carefully and nodded. I've seen it. When he came today, he was holding a black briefcase in his hand. It looked heavy, although I didn't see what was inside. But when he walked, the briefcase made a slight friction sound, like a rope or something. At this time, the chain of evidence is becoming more and more complete, and Shen Jingfeng's suspicion can no longer be shirked. The truth seems to be getting clearer. Lin Mo and Xiao Yi found Shen Jingfeng again and placed the fingerprints in a locked cylinder. The remains of beeswax, the traces of the rope on the legs of the desk, and Li Wan's testimony in front of him one by one, completely restoring the process of his crime. Shen Jing's face instantly turned pale. His originally calm expression disappeared without a trace. His fingertips trembled violently. His golden glasses slipped to the tip of his nose. He subconsciously wanted to raise his hand to hold the glasses, but found that his hand did not obey at all. He was silent for a long time. The atmosphere in the living room was so oppressive that it was breathless. The rain outside the window had stopped, and the sunset poured in through the window, casting mottled light and shadow on his face. Finally, he lowered his head. His shoulders trembled slightly. His voice was hoarse, and he had a hint of despair. That's right, I killed Zhu Changdi, and I also took the U-Trace map. Shen Jingfeng's psychological defense line completely collapsed, and he slowly raised his head, his eyes full of regret and madness. I have been looking for the U-Trace map for 10 years, and since I first saw a record of it in ancient books, I have made up my mind to find it. Half a year ago, I finally learned by chance that the U-Trace map was in his hands, hidden in the secret grid of the library. I asked him many times to buy the UG map, but he resolutely refused, saying that he would donate it to the museum. I have long known that Zhu Changdi has the UG map in his hand, and I have been looking for it for several years and have always wanted to buy it, but he refused. Shen Jingfeng lowered his head and his voice was hoarse. This time I thought I could use the matter of the Xuanyi painting score to force him to take out the UG map. But I didn't expect him to refuse, and scolded me as a liar, saying that I didn't understand ancient books at all. I had a murderous intention on the spur of the moment. Qin Jingfeng explained that after he quarreled with Zhu Chongdi, he deliberately pretended to be angry and left, went around to the backyard of Shigushe, took advantage of Li Yuan to go to the warehouse to sort out the books, opened the side door of the library with the key allocated in advance, and secretly hid back in the stairwell on the second floor. When Zhu Chongdi returned to the third floor and concentrated on recording the annotations on the UG2, on the fragments of the young lady Ian, he quietly rushed up, picked up the paper cutter on the desk, and stabbed Zhu Chongdi in the chest from behind. Zhu Chongdi subconsciously turned around, his eyes full of astonishment and anger. He stretched out his hand to grab the corner of his clothes, tore off half a piece of rice paper. He panicked for a moment, pushed Zhu Chongdi away. Zhu Chongdi fell to the ground on the spot, and never stood up again. My mind was blank at the time. My mind was full of UG2, and I didn't think about the consequences at all. Chen Jingfeng's voice was crying. I immediately went to the hidden compartment behind the bookshelf to take away the U-trace map, and then remembered that Zhu Chongdi might have left clues. So I rummaged around and saw that he was holding half a piece of rice paper in his hand and wanted to take it away, but found that the rice paper had been held very tightly by him. So I had to hurriedly tear it up and take away most of it, and the remaining half of it didn't have time to deal with it. So I hurriedly arranged the secret room, according to the method designed in advance. He arranged the secret room mechanism with thin nylon rope and beeswax, then left through the side door, got into the car waiting at the entrance of the alley in advance, ran the red light all the way to the museum, arrived at 11:15, met with the curator, and made an alibi. He threw nylon ropes, scissors and torn rice paper into the river on the way, thinking that this would destroy the corpse and disappear seamlessly. But he still left fingerprints, beeswax and rope traces, and finally found them. Xiao Yi immediately sent someone to search Chen Jingfeng's home and found the UG map in the safe in his study. The map is packed in an exquisite wooden box. The paper is yellow but well preserved. The handwriting and lines on it are clearly visible, and after the appraisal of cultural relics experts, it is indeed a genuine Song dynasty and priceless. At the same time, according to Chen Jingfeng's instructions, the police salvaged thin nylon ropes, scissors and torn rice paper in the river on the way, and after technical comparison, the fibers of the nylon rope were consistent with the fibers in the lock cylinder, and the handwriting on the rice paper was consistent with Zhu Chongdi's handwriting, and there were still a little Chen Jingfeng's fingerprints and rice paper fibers left on the scissors. All the evidence has been conclusive, forming a complete chain of evidence, and Chen Jingfeng confessed to his crimes. At this point, this murder case in the secret room of the old library, which caused a sensation in the ancient book circle in Qingzhou, was finally solved. When the police took Chen Jingfeng away, he looked back at his study, his eyes full of remorse. He was obsessed with ancient books all his life, but eventually embarked on the road of crime because of an ancient book, ruining his life and ruining to families. The rain stopped, and the sunset sprinkled on the bluestone slabs of the used book market through the clouds, reflecting a warm light, and the air washed by the rain was particularly fresh, but it could not wash away the residual smell of blood and the complex atmosphere of ink fragrance in the air. Lin Mo stood at the door of Shigushe, watching the clerk Li Yuan carefully pack the ancient books in the store. Her movements were very light, as if she was treating fragile treasures. Her eyes were full of sadness, but with a hint of firmness. She wanted to guard the bookstore for Zhu Chongdi and these ancient books. Lin Mo's heart was filled with complicated emotions. There was relief after solving the case, but more regret. Zhu Chongdi was obsessed with ancient books all his life, regarded ancient books as his life, and collected the UG map, not for profit, but to protect this cultural heritage. But in the end he died because of this map. Chen Jingfeng was also obsessed with ancient books, but he was carried away by greed and desire. And in order to get the U-trace map, he did not hesitate to kill the killer. And after all, he could not escape the punishment of the law. Ancient books are originally carriers of inheriting culture, but they have become the fuse that triggered murders, which is perhaps the saddest place. He looked down at his hands, and the scent of ink from ancient books and the smell of blood at the seam still remained on his fingertips. For 3 years, he deliberately avoided detective cases in order to get rid of the shadow of the past, but every time he encountered a case, his sense of responsibility in his bones would still drive him to step forward. He knew that he could never really leave the road of detectives, and the truth was like a beam of light, guiding him forward. even if the road ahead was full of thorns. Xiao Yi came over and patted Lin Mo on the shoulder. You're still powerful, if it weren't for you. I don't know how long this case will drag on. Lin Mo smiled, didn't speak, just shook his head slightly. He looked up at the third floor of the library, where the windows were open, and the wind blew out the fragrance of ink, mixed with a faint scent of sunshine, as if telling the tragedy caused by this ancient book. Zhu Changdi's round eyes and Chen Jingfeng's remorseful expression flashed in his mind again, and his heart was mixed. He knew that there were still many bizarre cases in this world, and there were many people driven by desire and greed, and he, as long as Xiao Yi needed it, as long as the truth was still there, would continue to accompany Xiao Yi to uncover one truth after another, even if he had to face those darkness and pain again. Xiao Yi saw his thoughts, patted him on the shoulder, and said in a sincere tone, I know you feel uncomfortable, but you have done a good job. If it weren't for you, this case might never be solved, and Zhu Changdi wouldn't be able to rest in peace. No matter when, I believe in you, and the Force will always welcome you back. Lin Mo's heart warmed. He nodded, and did not speak. He was not ready to return to the police force. The shadow of the unjust case had not completely dissipated. He needed time, too. A few days later, Chen Jingfeng was arrested for intentional homicide, and what awaits him will be severe punishment by the law. The Yuji map was donated to the Municipal Museum for the public to visit. Shigu She was taken over by Li Wan, continuing to inherit the ink fragrance of the old town. Lin Mo still identifies ancient books in his small shop every day, and occasionally receives calls from Xiao Yi to go to the next crime scene. He knew that as long as the truth was still there, he would not stop. However, what no one knew was that the night before Chen Jingfeng's arrest, a mysterious man sneaked into his home and took a note sandwiched in the Yuji map, with a strange string of coordinates written on it. And this string of coordinates points to an abandoned tomb outside Qingzhou City. Lin Mo accidentally learned about this, and his heart felt a little uneasy. He knew that this old book-building mystery case might not really be over, and a bigger conspiracy was quietly brewing. He took out the note he found from the fragment of the Young Lady Dian, re-examined the code on it, and suddenly found that there was a hidden line of small characters at the end of the code, written in special ink, which could only be seen clearly in the sun. The ancient tomb hides secrets, and the blood debt is paid for by blood. Lin Mo's eyes became solemn. He knew that he was about to be involved in an adventure of life and death, and all of this was inextricably linked with the U-Trace map. He packed his bags, left a note for Xiao Yi, and then embarked on the road alone to the abandoned tomb outside Qingzhou City. Under the setting sun, his figure was stretched for a long time and disappeared into the alleys of the old town, leaving only a faint fragrance of ink and an unsolved mystery.